Good morning, and welcome to share a few morning minutes with me in my garden. I am Sara, and this is an extraordinarily quiet time for me in the garden, in Sara's kitchen garden, Skillnadens trädgård in Sweden. And I just woke up basically. My colleague Elin sent me a text, asked for something, and I was just, oh, time to get up, and reminded myself that I had promised myself to do one live stream this week very early in the morning, so that you who are watching from other parts of the world maybe can stop by and check my live stream directly. So yeah, this is how the morning looks in my garden at the moment, and I will find a nice place to sit down. I think I have, as I told you in a recent video, a few places where I like the view. I like the view of the garden and the house, but it's up here with the stone wall, and at the moment I don't rely on my connection. I don't trust it, so I will stay closer to the house. We actually bought yesterday, not me, my husband bought some kind of system that will make the signal stronger. Good morning, Eva Madeleine from Denmark. So you are up early. I will turn the camera and, oh, New Zealand, Maria, hi. I was hoping to see you. So let's see if Catherine shows up as well. I will turn the camera and show you the garden. Before doing those live streams, I have not cleaned things up or make it look pretty in the garden. I just press publish or go live on the camera, and I think this is one of the most important things maybe with my garden, that it is just an ordinary garden. And in Sweden this is like I would not say like a famous garden, but other would say it is, but it's like a well-known garden. And I think one of the most important things, I'm tired, I cannot talk nearly in Swedish, but is that it is just an ordinary garden with all the things that you cannot find time to do, or all the joy you feel for a certain project and you leave the rest of it, and all the mess the children can come up with, and yourself, of course. You see, there's things all over the place. But I think it's a nice way because it's sort of connects us together. And I think a lot about that, having the most beautiful garden, or having a garden where I can, live in. And it's the same with the house. It's pretty messy. I actually went knitting with my friend Katinka yesterday. She lives just a couple of minutes from here. I knit some, as you may have noticed. And she said, well, you and Philip, you are like that. You are so Bohemian. And we actually checked the word up in the, in a list. And yeah, maybe you could say it's a Bohemian life in that way that we do not fit in do you say norms? We try to do things our way. And that is maybe one of the things I appreciate the most by being grown up and adult, that I can choose what I want to do. And that it's actually the same with the garden. I check a whole lot of garden magazines, and I read some books, and I follow people at internet and so on. And I always come back to how nice it is to have my own place and be able to do my own choices and to do what I want. I try to tell my children that too, that it's lovely to be an adult and to have to choose for yourself. Sometimes I would like to phone my mother, mainly my mother, and say, can't you decide for me what to do? Now I will turn the camera. So this is where the sun rises in the mornings. So the kitchen garden is placed in an excellent way in the garden. So we have the sun, and the sun comes up here, and then it moves all the way over the sky and light up. So the kitchen garden is mainly with sunlight all day long. I think many of you wonder things about growing vegetables wintertime, and I'm so happy that you find that interesting also in countries where I thought maybe it would be more common to grow things wintertime. And well, you asked me plenty of questions, and as I said yesterday, I will try to do a Q&A in the end of the week and answering all your questions at the same time. And one of the most important things with growing vegetables wintertime is that you have to have a garden that is placed in a sunny place in the garden. It's no good to have like trees or walls or houses, buildings that gives shade to the garden. And actually I harvest from this place every day through the year. I could do that. Sometimes I don't, because I also have my big polytunnel, and when it's very snowy I can go out in the polytunnel to pick some food. But as I tried to show you another day, this is the salsify, the black salsify in the ground here. If I find a spade I may show you, could dig one up. Yes, Catherine, I am up early, all for you in New Zealand or whatever. I'm trying to catch you in one live stream. But the salsify, the black salsify, is actually very hardy, so you can keep it in the ground. So we eat like potatoes now in late fall and winter, early winter. And then when potatoes are finished, when there's no potatoes left, we start to harvest the salsify because it overwinters. So by doing that, I can, I'm looking for the English word, a brygga. I try to make like a crossover from one season to another. And I use some type of vegetables, like the black salsify and like spinach and in a way Swiss chard and the lamb's lettuce, things that I can overwinter to give me harvest in between, the late harvest and the early harvest. And that's very important, I think, in my garden, and that's why I succeed to grow this amount of food. I will come back to that later in week as well, the amount of food and how I think about that. It's when talking about this, I try to be very careful to say that this is how I choose to do it. Because sometimes I notice in Sweden, when I get, because I am, the things I write, they are seen a lot, they are shared a lot at Facebook and YouTube and so on. And some people, they like to say bad things. And they say like, oh, she don't know anything, she's not educated, and she's not blah, 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 blah. And then I try to remember to always remind myself and others that this is how I do it. And yes, you can complain and things, but this is mine. And I have the right to do it this way. And I have the right to grow my garden exactly the way I want. And I have the right to say exactly what I want about it as well in my channels. So this is what I try to do. Yeah. I actually brought with me a question. See if I can find it here. And it's a question from Julie. I'm listening now if I can hear some sounds from indoors. they were asleep, heavily asleep, when I left the building. Before I read the question, I will tell you, I am the mother of 4 children. They are beautiful, lovely, adorable, and we spend a lot of time in the garden, of course. But when I am working in the garden together with the children, I can't get much done, you know. I think that it slows down my garden work, well, like twice, can you say so, when working with the children. So it's more fun, and it's a learning thing to be out with the kitchen, with the kids in the garden. So sometimes I try to find those minutes where I can go out in the garden all by myself, and most of the times I try to do this in mornings, basically in weekends or in summertime when the children are free from school. So then I go up like 4:30 in the morning. In summertime it's all bright by then in the mornings. So I go out and I can work for several hours, and it's important not only because I get things done in the garden, it's also important for me personally, because when I am quite quick. I work fast, and I'm quite strong, and I can get plenty of things done when working. Sorry, but when the children are with me, I am slower. So, and it's sometimes very frustrated because it's like I feel bad about myself not being that quick as before, and I'm thinking, oh, maybe I'm not as strong as I was before, or maybe I can't do it, and I doubt about myself in the garden and what I can achieve. But having those moments when I can actually run out in the garden and I get so many things done, so it's important for me to feel that I am capable, I am still strong, I am still Sara. And also when I am being out in the garden, I feel beautiful. I get a bit touched. But you know, I have been carrying children, I have been breastfeeding children, I have been with children for 10 years. And sometimes, it's not sometimes, it's pretty much all the time, you tend to forget about yourself. And I talk about this, I have begun talking with my friends about this. I don't know why we didn't talk about it before, but the changes you go through as a woman, as a mother, and all the things. And it's like a stronger sisterhood when we share those things too. And so for me, it's when I am out. It's difficult to describe this, but when I'm out and I feel capable, I feel strong, and I feel happy because I can actually think about things that I want to think about, and I can continue one thought and I can end it and start a new one without being interrupted all the time. Then I feel like complete, and I carry that feeling with me when I go back in the house. You understand me? So it's like I'm not sick in a way or anything. I'm just filled with everything that life brings me. And it's like I find more of that Sara when I am out in the kitchen garden. And I was so surprised when noticing this for the first time, how this place makes me live. And yeah, you understand, Maria. And I think this is something that's very difficult to describe to one who have not a garden. I'm sure you can find it in many different ways, but as my mother said, because she grew vegetables when I was a kid, and she said to me that I enjoyed it so much because I didn't have to argue with anyone out in the kitchen garden. I could just sit with my weeds. I have learned now I cannot say weed, it's weeds with an S. Thank you, Marianne. Well, you can sit out in the garden and you can do things, and and you don't have to argue about any decision. And that is why I am very satisfied at the moment that I don't have to share this plot with my husband, for example. I envy those couples who can share the interest for garden. Believe me. And when I started gardening and my husband said, I will not do this with you. I'm not interested. I don't want to dig. I don't want to garden. I was very sad about it, thinking that this is not normal to not have this interest. But as time went by, I felt more confident that this is the way that we should have it. I want to have this interest, and I need it. Instead, he likes to read books. That's his huge interest. And my dream is to have time to prepare like space for him in the garden where he can sit and read, so he can be out with us in the garden with the children. And while they are getting older, so in a few years' time they may not want to be out the same way as they are now. Well, anyhow, I didn't plan to talk about this, but it was nice to say something about it, and that's also one thing that I think when I have like courses in how to grow vegetables, I have that a few times each year. We get together a whole lot of people, and we don't have to say much about those things, because it's like normal. It's like normal for everyone to pee in a potty. It's like normal for everyone to collect leaves and grass clippings and whatever, and it's normal for everyone to feel alive in the garden. Now I will turn back to Julie's question. First of all, Julie asked me if my books are going to be translated into English. I have written 3 books, best-selling garden books in Sweden, and I am hoping, I would be so happy if one of them would reach out to the English-speaking garden world. What I have heard is that it's very difficult to translate and to publish books about one single person, if you understand me. If you write a more traditional garden book with showing methods and that are not used in one specific garden. I mean, this is Sara's garden. This is Sara's kitchen garden. So when publishing a book, you will have to publish Sara in a way too. So it's more difficult to do that. What we hope for is that the 3rd book that was published in August, I should have brought with me a book. I will go get one. That the 3rd book may be more interesting because it's more general about winter gardening, and it's a very specific subject as well. I will now sneak into the house. Shh. Cats are awake. Exactly, Maria. Don't wake the babies. I remember one time when we had our first baby, Otto. And with the first baby you are not that confident with things maybe. And our neighbor over here, I'll show you. This is our only neighbor. No, we have 2, of course. Ulf and Ingela. And there's an old man, Birger, living there. And Ulf, living in this house, he is a hunter. So he's got dogs. And I remember one time when Otto, he had like a few weeks when he didn't want to sleep at night. He woke up, and I knew that another neighbor, she's got a son, Alex, and he is only 2 weeks older than Otto, and he was awake at the same time, and I could see over to their place, and I knew that she was awake and I was awake with Otto. So several nights we had that damn dog running through the garden barking, bark, 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 bark. And I was like, oh, don't he know how important it is to be quiet night time? Anyhow, this is the book, and its title is Winter Gardening: Harvest When It Is Cold. And I have never even showed, I think, the book in a video, so I will just show you. I will get back to the question soon. Right, so this is the book, and this is my colleague Maria Forsberg. Yes, Maria, it's a super nice cover. And when we have chosen who to work with, this is the publisher. It's a great publisher. We get so nice support for everything. We have thank you, Molly, saying that I love this book. We made a huge job to make this book, and the others, of course, like a beautiful book, but at the same time a book that makes you feel, that makes it feel possible. I mean, this is actually how the vegetables look when you pull them out of the ground in snow. It's so nice to share this with you. I have made schedules for when and where I grow the vegetables. Look. I will just take a few seconds to show you. Maria's picture are just beautiful. I always get when when the publisher sends me the first copy of the book, I always cry because it's we do so much work with the book. This is, I call it a spinach bomb in this palette color. Well, and Maria, she follows me and the children around in the garden, and she has done that for several years, but I don't get to see the pictures until they are in this PDF file, but then you can't really relate to them, and then you get a book. Look, that's the sweater I have. The pattern is called Riddari, and it's an Icelandic pattern. You can find it on the internet. It's very, very easy actually to knit. It's not complicated, and it's quite fast. Spinach. I love to be out in the garden in winter time. It's so funny. I mean, you do things. Here I put seeds in a compost bin, and well, a few months later I can harvest food. Check, here's the pea shootings, pea sprouts in big containers. This is how happy you get when you grow vegetables. It's difficult to do a book in which, you know, you don't share your garden, you know, when it's fully, when it's thriving. I like the back of the book too. I'm looking so serious. I will try not to forget here. Well, let's try to turn the camera. Well, I wanted to say that it's difficult to do a project like this where you don't share the garden when it looks the most in its most beautiful way. I mean, if you check any garden magazine, you will find a thriving garden. It's flowers, and there's things fully grown in a way, and it looks just beautiful. And this is one thing with a winter garden that I always come back to, and also when I have my public speeches. It's difficult because when people come to see my garden in those cold seasons, they say, "Oh, we're going to Sara's garden and we're going to have a look." And if you are not gardening like the same way, you come here and say, "Oh, all right. So where's the vegetables?" Because the vegetables are very tiny, most of them, and you don't see them. They could be hidden under a lid or in a greenhouse, but they look like weeds, so you don't know that you can actually eat them. So I think we have to change our minds about what is like a lush and productive garden. It could be almost invisible. Before I answer the question, the language, I think it's funny. My friend Caroline, she used to say that you have to do things that you are uncomfortable with like 3 times. It's like you buy a piece of clothes and you feel a bit uncomfortable wearing it because it's too nice, it's too much of everything, and you wear it 3 times and you make it yours. And it's like the same way, I think, with speaking English. I feel uncomfortable and I use the wrong words all the time, but obviously you understand me, and I think it's funny. It makes me more confident to do those live videos, so I think I will continue them. All right. Second question. When do you prepare your outside beds for winter? And I chose this question because it's pretty much what I do at the moment, right? So, but I am not sure if I prepare the garden beds for winter or if I prepare them for spring. It's a bit in between, I think. I have, as you see in my garden, I have different sections in my garden. In this place I grew like beans and peas and the brassicas, and over by the wall I had a mixture of things. I believe I was supposed to grow onions and leek. It didn't turn out well at all because it was an awful summer for that type of vegetable. Everything just dried out. It was too hot and too warm and too little water. And over here I have the root vegetables. When I go out in the kitchen garden early in springtime, and if I measure the temperature, do you say that? I have done that in the first day in March, I think, 1 year. And then I checked the temperature in a garden bed over here, not protected with anything. I just put down the thermometer and it showed like 0 degrees Celsius. It's just this, that is the freezing point in Celsius. All right, so you cannot grow anything there because it's freezing cold, right? But I will not go that far today. Over by the fence, where you can see I have those deep dug bed, and I have built them in a way so that I can protect them with sort of a frame around them, and I can put on a lid or a row cover. And under this row cover, same year, same day, I checked the temperature, and that was 6 degrees Celsius, 6 degrees like positive. And over here, I don't know if you can see the wool. I have now planted blueberries in that part. But before that, it was just an ordinary garden bed, and I had this frame. Again, I have frames that I can lift and move around in the garden and put wherever I want to have them. So I had a frame and I had a lid, a plastic lid, and it gives even more shelter and protection than the row cover. and in that bed it was 8 or 9. New York, hi. In that bed it was 8 or 9 degrees. And you know, some vegetables like spinach and like some peas or whatever, some other leafy greens, I don't remember exactly which one, they grow like when it's 4 or 6 degrees into the soil, right? So if I should finish this. 8 or 9 degrees in that bed. And then in polytunnel, in big polytunnel, you could see over here, the same day, it was in an ordinary garden bed into the soil. It was, I think, 14 or 15 degrees, pretty much. And then I had a hot bed in the polytunnel as well. And it was 20, 24 degrees in that bed. So the same day, the same time, in the same garden, you can actually create spaces where it is between 0 and 24 degrees into the soil. And you actually have to believe that there's plenty of things that you can grow if you manage to create that space. And why is that important when it comes to Julie's question about how to prepare garden beds? Because now in the fall I have to choose which garden beds I will grow in wintertime and springtime to get this early harvest. So which bed should I choose then? I will not choose this part of the garden, because in this part of the garden it will be 0 degrees when I want to make sowings. It may be snow in this part, but in that part over by the fence and the stone wall, it is protected from wind, so it's very sheltered. And when the sun comes up and it shines all day long, the snow melts. So when it's like bare soil in that part, it's still snowy in this part. So therefore, I will not prepare my garden beds for sowing in this part. But in that part, I will go up there later to show you, I can do that. So I make, I prepare and I think differently about the different sections. And this midsection in the garden as well, it's covered with snow and it's very cold. It's no use for me to put my precious time at the moment in that part. What I do is that I don't know what you call it in English, but I change the place for like brassicas and carrots and potatoes and tomatoes as well each year. So I will move the brassicas from this part to that part next year. Brassicas are one of the most, the hungriest plants in the kitchen garden. They need plenty of nutrition in the soil. I need to fertilize a lot. And as you may know by now, I do not use like manure from horse and cows and whatever. It's not because I don't like that type of manure. I simply don't have it. But what I do have is plenty of organic materials. I will show you. This is how the ground looks in my garden. And all of this, crop rotation, thank you, from New York. I have plenty of like leaves and plant materials. This is the things that things throw on their compost heap. So they actually, I think this is ridiculous. You actually take all those things, you collect it and you put it in a wagon or whatever, and you drag it from one place in the garden to another. And most of the time it is on the back side of the garden where you don't want to look at it. And you put it there to create new soil. And while your garden is completely cleared out from everything. This is not a good way to garden, in my opinion. If I do the opposite, I get this result. And what I do is that I leave it on the ground, right? So when I harvest this thing, for example, I leave it on the ground. And the worms will eat it. And it will become new soil for me. Right, so the brassicas, they need plenty of nutrition in the ground. And what I do as to prepare the ground for next year is that I I put plenty of organic materials in that part of the garden where I should grow the brassicas next year. And this is basically the part. I have 4 large beds. They are 6 meters long and nearly 1 meter the other way. And I put all kinds of organic materials on these beds. And I will show you. This is how it looks. So I have this happened to be almost like a fermented grass. My dog loves to eat it. And underneath I have plant parts, and underneath you can sort of things here. This bed I have the self-sufficiency, and it is mulched with grass clippings. And this bed I am working on right now. First of all, I grow beans in this part, and then I mulch it as much as possible. And you know, the beans and the peas, they actually fertilize the soil only by growing. And then I put this extra material on, and the worms will work this and transform it into fresh soil for next season. And this is a part where I have used wool, and this is an amazing place. I will try to show you. This cover has been on the soil for, I think, 6 weeks or so. And it was a quite messy place after the harvest. But now if I lift this, check this out, right? Isn't it amazing? Here, microorganisms, in only a few weeks' time, they have transformed it to nearly soil. In this place, I could actually dig this place only by using hands. This is the best soil ever for planting like the brassicas. So I turn my waste, my garden waste, into fresh soil. By simply keeping it in my garden. And I think this is what people do wrong. They think the garden have to be clean, and they buy things to put into the soil as a fertilization. And instead you should just use the things you have and think about to give it back to the soil. So this is one of the things that I do. I prepare the brassica space for next year by mulching the garden, the beds. And I use all kinds of things. I get a question about the wool. I have made a blog post about wool. It's you can read it in both Swedish and English at sarabäckmo.se and sarabäckmo.com. I will try to remember to put a link in the description to this video. Check out later. It will become soil, yes, but at the moment it's a mulch, and I will plant right through it next spring. So this is one thing that I do, and when I have done this, I will simply continue doing the same in other parts of the garden if I do have the time, if I have the strength, and if the weather allows me. But then I have also I prepare space in the garden where I will grow vegetables very early for an early harvest next year. And I do that differently from like this work. So I try to choose the garden beds that are most protected. And there I don't want to have this mulch lying on the surface, because it protects not only from like cold now, in late fall, it also protects from heating up. Hi Mia from Germany. It also protects the soil from so it doesn't heat up early in spring. And therefore I also want to have a few garden beds that are not covered with any mulch. I'll try to go up in that part so you can see. Beautiful colors, isn't it? Oh, I can see someone has been playing in my bed. So this is the most protected or sheltered place in the garden. Here I have weeds and beautiful turnips and spinach and radishes and leaves from beetroots, and I have planted a lot of garden beds and raised beds with onions. It's shallots, and here you can see the two raised deep dog bed that I was talking about. And as you can see, I have not covered or mulched this bed. I will keep it with bare soil for now, and that is simply so that I can, in December, January, February or whatever, I can go out here and I can make sowings. So I will put a frame around it so that I can protect with a lid. And my plan is to sow carrots. Summer carrots or early carrots are perfect to sow in wintertime, because then I can harvest them already in the end of May, for example. We are now in Sweden. It's important to say it's in Sweden. And we have so many things we can do in the garden, even though it's in Sweden. So yeah, that's what I do. And before now, just fixing the surface, I need to fertilize the soil, and I do it by digging down organic materials. So I do like a trench in the middle, and I dig up the soil and I lay it on the sides, and I dig as deep as possible, really. And then I throw down pretty much anything that I can come up with. It's like leaves and all the things that have grown here in this space. I just put it down there, and I step on it to push it down, and then I cover it with the soil. And then the worms and the microorganisms in the soil, they start to prepare this, and they in only a few months' time, it will look the same way as underneath the wool. So I always want to work together with my soil. The soil is my friend, really, and it's very interesting. So that's what I do and how I prepare all my garden beds at the moment, in those two ways. Either I mulch it, or either I leave it with bare soil, so that I can start grow my vegetables very early. And I have sort of a system in my head. I don't write things down that carefully, really. I start with this bed with the brassicas, and next year this part will I will grow tomatoes, I think, in the open. Next year I have never grown tomatoes in this area, and tomatoes and brassicas and like the corn and other things that gives me big plants, they are possible to plant in a garden bed that looks like this. You simply push the material aside a bit until you reach down to the soil, and then you plant your vegetable in there. So it doesn't matter if it looks like this in springtime. And this bed was actually looked pretty much the same a few months ago in springtime. I can show you over here. I mean, it's not much weeds in this bed. Some of them are more infected. Here you can see I have covered with grass clippings. And this is the soil and how it gets. In just a few weeks' time, you can see the result, and then a few months later you have this perfect soil. Only by keeping your garden waste in the garden, actually. I think it's amazing. And I buy like 2 or 3 or 4 sacks with soil for to make plantings like indoors winter time. But in summertime I simply have to remove soil from my garden beds. So now you saw in yesterday's video when I prepared a new raised bed over there. I simply get soil from one part in the garden and I use it in another part. And I have to do that now and then simply because I get too much soil in my raised beds. In Swedish you would call this area a raised bed garden, but I know in the US and other parts you talk about raised beds only about beds that are in some sort of a frame. Well, I start to freeze now. I'm getting cold with my fingers and I am hungry for tea and a lovely sandwich. So I think I will go get myself some radishes and some rocket for a breakfast sandwich and go indoors. Today I am going to edit a podcast. I do a podcast together with another gardener in Swedish. I am a former radio, I have worked for 20 years for the Swedish Public Service Company. So it's really nice to do a podcast and definitely about gardening. So I will edit the podcast and I will write a few things that I have pushed in front of me for a long time. And next time I'll see you will be tomorrow. Tomorrow it's Friday and I have unfortunately promised my children to go to a place called Leo's Lekland. And it's because they learned how to swim this summer, so it's a gift for them. I have never been to that place simply because I'm a bit scared about it. It's a place, where hundreds of children, they get together and they play and they jump from things and they climb through things. And I have 4 children and I am getting a cold at the moment, so I am... how will that be? But my husband said, you have never been there, so it's your turn. And he's working tomorrow. So I don't know actually when I shall stop by saying hi to you. It will be in the afternoon and I will have all the children with me. And maybe you could send some questions to them. Maybe they want to say something. Anyhow, thank you a lot for today. It was a long live video. I can see that some of you drop in all now, but you will have to check this afterwards. Thank you for today and don't forget to subscribe and give me this thumb up, and also visit sarabäckmo.com for more information, or sarabäckmo.se. Enjoy the rest of the day, you too, Maria, and thank you. See you tomorrow. Bye bye.